Hello and welcome to From Mrs. to Me, a podcast where you'll be inspired by courageous stories of strength and resilience told by women just like you who have been through the upheaval of divorce. This is their journey from Mrs. to Me, finding their true identity and creating a bold, beautiful life. I'm Crissy Freeman and I'm your host, a certified life coach and divorced mother of two. Join me each week as we explore real stories of divorce and what it takes to transform and live in alignment with the real you. Hello, and welcome to another episode of From Mrs. to Me. I'm your host, Crissy Freeman. As most of you know, we are running a special series on the From Mrs. to Me podcast this month called Overcoming Financial Overwhelm After Divorce. My next guest in the series is a dear friend who is brave enough to come on here and share her story of resilience and how she is taking steps every day to rebuild her life after divorce. Her story will resonate with many of you out there who are in the midst of the storm right now, trying to pick up the pieces in order to create an authentic, fulfilling life after the upheaval of divorce. Her strength and courage will inspire you. So please welcome to the show, my friend, Alex Bregman. It's so great to have you here. Thank you for being brave enough to share your story with everyone today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I feel completely honored to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
It's my honor for sure. So to get started, as we talk here on this podcast about stories of resilience, both pre and post-divorce, your story is very similar to mine in a lot of ways, but no one's story is exactly the same. Involves alcoholism, which is not only difficult to talk about, it can also feel very isolating when you're going through it. So to get things started, do you mind starting off by sharing a little bit more with the audience about your journey through divorce?
Yeah. So, I think, I went through a divorce where, like many people, it was really rocky for a long time. These things don't happen overnight. We all do the proverbial, it will get better. I'll stay for my kids. I'll, beg, borrow, and steal, whatever I have to do to keep things going. And the alcoholism issue kind of deteriorated over time. I don't feel like I married an alcoholic. I've looked at it really deeply in hindsight, but it's something that happened gradually over time. And it really took such a deep effect on myself and my kids. And I spent a lot of time, covering for him, if you will. But what was really interesting is I think most people say that they spent a lot of time hiding what was happening at home. What was interesting was everyone around me knew what was happening. It was a very clear situation. So I think if anything, I dealt with it by making it into a joke a little bit, saying, oh, it's fine. This is what's happening. I'm just going to keep going for my kids. Everyone around me could see it and I could see it. So that was hard on me because I know how deeply I accepted it. But I just learned to know every behavior of an alcoholic. I never understood what being part of the dysfunction cycle and alcoholism was until I stopped and kind of talked to a therapist about it. And just even the things that you do by looking for the alcohol, catching them doing behaviors when they've promised to not drink, all the little things, that you do is you locking into that cycle with them. I just didn't want, I thought, like I'm sure you did, that my kids didn't really see what was happening, but they did see their dad just continue to withdraw and withdraw and withdraw. So they knew that. I think what was difficult too was in order to be a good mom, instead of being negative, I would say, Dad is sick. well, why can't you help dad? Well, if dad isn't willing to help himself, then there's nothing I can do. What was really, really interesting, and I think this is helpful maybe to people going through this, is when I finally left, moved into my own place, me and both the boys were a unit. We were such a tight unit because we were in such chaos and dysfunction at its worst. We were sort of a survival unit, if you will. And when I moved out, we had a lot of conflict. And I remember being so perplexed by that. I didn't understand. It was suddenly like that unit was broken apart and they were angry at me because we were all so used to living in, dysfunction and chaos. That's what we knew. And so, of course, when that's all you want to live in that. It feels more comfortable. So, they felt like living in that dysfunction was easier than, being removed from it. So that was tough, and learning that you're the safe parent and that things get taken out on you because you're the safe parent. That was a really tough learning curve for me, because you're doing yourself a disservice by hiding, if you will, because, you're not always a good parent. You're not doing yourself any favor because, you need your kids to see this is a terrible situation. I need to tell you that this isn't right. This isn't the way to live. This isn't, but, they're also simultaneously losing their dad, losing their home, losing the life that they know, because that's all that they knew. So it was, even though moving on is the right thing to do, it feels very wrong in the beginning.
Yeah, and I might stop you right there just for a second because I wanna focus on a couple of things that you talked about that I think are really important to highlight for people out there listening. One is about the kids, and that is this. I hear it all the time on this podcast from guests, is trying to protect them and hide things from them. And as you know, as you just shared, they are so intuitive. They know what's going on regardless of what is happening. And so what I want to ask you is, looking back on it, as because we learn from every one of these difficult situations in our lives, right? Looking back on it, do you have any, thoughts, advice for the audience around what you might do differently in terms of, what you said around, I was doing anything to protect the kids?
Yeah. I mean, what was really hard was, even though, he was very withdrawn, drinking every single day heavily, because it's ironic, because I'm such a, honestly, self-confident person, I expect, a lot. I expect a lot from myself, is I stood up for myself a lot. I did actually do that. And the problem is it led to a lot of fighting. And I wish, I looked just as guilty because I was locked into that fighting pattern. In hindsight, I wish I hadn't done that. That's the tough part is, I am guilty of being part of that and that, verbal conflict in front of them. But yeah, they 100%, they know what's going on. They're not, of course, did they know every detail? No, but they feel the energy at the very least, they feel the energy. They're viewing someone drinking every day. They're viewing a relationship and they know it's not a good relationship. It's not laughing. It's not communicating. They have other relationships in their life, teachers, friends, they see what normal relationships look like. I think that's what people don't realize. They see other normal relationships outside their home. So even if they don't see one at home, they do know other relationships and see, oh, wow, this is the way these people interact. that's different than what's happening in my house. And I think a 5-year-old can figure that out as much as a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
For sure.
And do you mind sharing for the audience how long you were married, by the way?
Yeah. So we had dated in college. So we were together for a few years, and then we were married for almost 20 years. So, I had known him since he was 19, so that's a lifetime.
Yeah.
Truly half your life. So a long time.
So when do you think that you started to realize that there wasn't going to be another choice for you, meaning staying in the marriage wasn't going to be an option?
Yeah. So what happened was, and was a really tough story. And it's not hard to share actually at all now in going forward. Because like you said, sharing these stories helps other women who think they're scary and want them to be secrets. My older son was late to school. There had been a huge blowout fight in the morning over not being able to find the car keys. I'm really being late to school is my kryptonite. So my kids know. So it was this huge conflict. I got him to school. He ended up being late. And when you're late to school, you have to fill out a tardy slip. And so for a reason, it could be, dentist appointment, whatever the reason. And he wrote, drunk dad lost keys. And the school called me. Yeah, I was, these things happen for a reason. And that was real tough, and, they called me. They didn't call his dad, that's also interesting. But, that was a huge moment, that it's spilling over, it's spilling over. You can't cover the holes anymore. It's not contained to your home. It's going into other areas of your life. So it was hard to know what to say on the other line to the guidance counselor. And, obviously they're concerned. And so then I had to let my ex-husband know what happened. And I will say many things happened prior to this. This was not a single incident. And so I'm not an angry person. I got so upset. And when I shared what happened, he sort of just said, oh, that's too bad. Because he had brushed off so many things. And with alcoholism, you keep thinking, rock bottom will happen, and it never does. But, or it does and it still doesn't matter. But he brushed it off, and I got so angry that I shoved him. And it was so shocking to me that I was like, wow, that's, if that isn't a sign, then it should be, and then, and we can go into the financial aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely want to do that. And I want to just pause there for a minute, because I think, that's a really impactful thing that you just shared. And, I think anyone who's in a partnership with someone who's an alcoholic, there is those moments where, you finally just say, okay, I have to do something different. You become that. For me, I became this codependent who thought I could fix him, right? And I just kept thinking he's going to wake up. And to your point, he's going to hit rock bottom. It's coming. It's coming. This next one's going to be it.
You beg for it, ironically.
You do. Oh, you do. You hope it's going to happen, as scary as that is, because you don't know what it's going to look like. But, I got the call from DHS after one of my children shared with her doctor that in a physical appointment that her dad had picked her up after school, and he was intoxicated. And I immediately got a call from the doctor's office, and then I got a call from DHS. And when you said that, wow, like it just sent like chills through my entire body, because I remember that. And when you said the brushing it off, that exact thing happened. In fact, he wouldn't even come to the meeting with me with DHS. I had to go by myself because he had to work. And he said, it's not a big deal. I don't even know why she would say that. That's crazy. So
Yeah.
but that's what
Oh,
happens, right?
I actually have a rule with my kids, and I think this came out of alcoholism. We never say the word "you're crazy" or "crazy," and you never say that. That's like a big thing, and it's "you're crazy" or "you're delusional." So those are big. Whatever the trigger might be in the situation. Now I have like a family rule. We don't ever use those terms.
Oh, I
Ever.
love that. And you're such a great mom. I mean, such a great mom. And those boys, I know how important they are to you. And I know how, you and I've talked before. And just to go back for another second is to talk about how you're the safe person. And I think it's important to highlight that, because for anyone out there who's also struggling with this, there is a safe parent when one is, an addict or, an alcoholic, whatever it might be. There is a safe parent. And, if that's you, you're going to be the one that is the brunt of a lot of the emotions that come up for your kids. And it sucks and it hurts. And you feel like, what am I doing wrong? And what actually is happening is you're doing everything right. You're the one that's there for them.
That's tough. That was hard for me, and that's a continuing battle that, their dad is really involved in their life very minimally, which has been a shocking part of the process to me. I never thought I would see that happen. So I really am the everything. I'm the mom, I'm the dad, I'm the safe person, I'm the financial provider, I'm, you name it, I'm the list of,
You're everything.
And I have moments where I think actually some people battle so heavily on, oh, I can't ever, make a decision with my ex, and we fight about what are they going to do, where are they going, all these little things. So if I'm looking at gratitude, which we should talk about the gratitude piece, is I'm grateful that I am in charge of everything. There is an upside to it. I don't, yes, I battle with myself sometimes, but it is a good feeling. I don't have to check it out with anyone. It's between us, and it's been tough, but it's that aspect of it is something that I never thought would be a benefit.
Yeah. And I do want to highlight that. So thank you for saying that, because I think in these situations, you do have to focus on those things that you are grateful for, even if it is the smallest thing. Like, it's literally taking a shower some days,
Oh yeah,
and so the fact that that's what you're finding in all that you found in all of this, that's actually a really big thing that I think women don't think about is, when you're in a relationship with someone, regardless of whether or not they're an alcoholic, you're constantly checking with them to see, can you do this, whether it's financially, whether it's, just decisions you want to make in general for the family. You don't have to do that anymore. You are your own boss. You get to decide
yeah.
what you want to do. And that is so empowering. And while you're still going to grieve and you're still going to go through all these other emotions, that is huge. And gratitude in general, I think, is a practice that some people will say, oh God, it's not roses and butterflies. Like, come on. And it's not.
Oh no. I'm like, I'm not roses and butterflies. I'm like skulls and black clothes. So
I love that.
that it's BS. Like, I mean, right. It took a lot of really, hard ass days and times and events for me to just struggle and be like, okay, you keep reading this stuff about, oh, you feel depressed, go run. If you feel this way, do this. So one of the things is always, if you're feeling sad, look for gratitude. So my new thing is just try it. Just try. It's like being the picky eater. Just try a bite. If you don't like it, you don't have to keep eating it. And so it is when you're struggling really hard, it's just the smallest thing, to just, and you have more than you think once you start thinking about it. Because, recently the financial thread is always, through my life, by the way. I know we'll get there one day, but, I said this recently, and I said, this sounds so incredibly naive, but I said, if it weren't for money problems, I would really like my life. And you know what? Not everyone can say that. Like it could be that, you have someone with an illness, something, like there are plenty of things in life that can't be fixed by having money. So, my mindset has had to be, go to other things, but I there are great aspects of my life. I'm extremely proud of my kids. And I know that I do believe that they would not be, as successful as they have been if I hadn't been, as resilient and kept going through some really, really tough moments.
And that is something to be proud of. Like, I just want to say that as your friend and just as people listening, like when you start to tell the sacrifices that you have made financially since the divorce, which we'll get into next, you have so much to be proud of and to keep your head held high, regardless of where you are financially. Those kids are thriving. And that was you. And you're still, the things that you're doing now, I'm sure sucks in the moment because you're in the midst of all this, financial struggle. But at the same time, you have your health, you have family, you have friends, and we'll talk some about that too. But, that is, I know you, so I can say you're a kick-ass person and mom. And to see where you are and where you're going, I think that is part of it. Is we can't say stuck. We can't say stay stuck, and so many people do, and it prevents you from moving forward. And so it's doing uncomfortable shit that is going to get us there. And
stuck. We've all been stuck. So that's what's important to say too, is I've had plenty of bad moments where I was frozen and didn't know what I was going to do. And, I would just say to people going through this is, don't worry about next year. I don't even worry about next week now. I don't, it's, I just read all the silly Instagram quotes and try to absorb them. But it is really, I see that you're not the same person you were a year ago. And that's beautiful. And that is really true. I take that very much to heart. And, I'm surrounded by amazing people. I was blessed on another level in having friends around me. Like if I'm a mildly religious person, but if God ever had a plan for me, he gave me amazing friends. And that's what's given me the ability to get to this point. No one does this alone by any stretch. I mean, I do think most people realize that. I was lucky enough. I would say I didn't even really have to ask for help. Like I was surrounded by such amazing people that it just happened. People just helped me. It wasn't like it just happened.
Yeah. Tell me about that. So I love that you touched on this because this is another thing I love to touch on. And then we will get to the financial overwhelm piece. But, I truly believe that you need to find your people. And so for people out, you have been blessed with having these great friends, right? And some people aren't. And so I do like to highlight for people a couple of things around that. One is that even if you don't have this huge network of friends, there are people that want to help. And the challenge is asking for help. And I think so many women, especially moms, struggle with asking for help. And so I would love for you to just share briefly just about how you leaned on your friends and how that sort of happened in terms of being your support for you as you went through this.
Yeah. And, you know, as I said, everyone around me knew what was happening. I wasn't hiding the situation from anyone, my family, my friends, everyone knew, because as you know, the cliche is you stay too long, and it is, you can't go back in time. You can't change that. But when I did move, when I left the home that we were living in, you know, I'd looked at all these different apartments and some pretty, you know, crappy looking places. And I did take a friend with me to look at places, but I ended up finding a house to rent. And it was across the street from one of my friends. I had met her through another close friend. So we were sort of friend acquaintances. And it ended up being like a miracle. We just have become, you know, like best friends. We're like sisters. I don't know if it's because she's an only child that almost fostered it too, but we lived right across the street from each other, and she just truly saved my life, you know. And I tell her that all the time. I mean, I don't know if it weren't for the location of where I moved to, you know, if it would have turned out the way it did, but it was an amazing stroke of luck.
I think there's no accidents, honestly. I really truly feel that way.
Said, "Oh, not that house. They need all these updates." And I'm like, I don't think you realize that my standards are quite low. So, you know, so it just ended up being, it really altered both of our lives in a great way. That truly helped me. You know, that was, you know, a lifesaver. And I had people reaching out to me nonstop. What do you need? What can I do? You know, everyone was there to help me, you know, and I don't, you know, don't ever be afraid to ask someone for help. I mean, I know there are some people who are afraid or, you know, don't want to accept it. I don't quite understand that. I feel like it's funny. I'm almost the opposite, because I've just always been an incredibly social person, love being surrounded by people. And I respect the people that like having two close friends. It's not that but I just, no one should ever be afraid to ask for help or,
No.
you know,
And you can't do it alone. You can't do this alone. And even if it's, you know, parents or a sibling or, you know, a coworker that you're close to, anybody, you need the help. And sometimes it's, you know, for you, it was, you know, helping you find this place, but also you made this amazing friendship. But then for somebody else, it might just be honestly just the emotional support too, you know, and there's so many resources out there too, and people that people know. And so that I love to highlight for people, because I think so many times, especially I find people in this situation where they don't want to admit that they need the help. And so so ask for the help. So that's just one of the things I wanted to highlight, but
absolutely.
And lean on your friends for sure. But I did want to touch, as we talked about, sort of the series right now is really about financial overwhelm. And so many women, I'm doing this because so many women I talk to and hear from, this is really the number one struggle is how do everybody keeps saying, put yourself out there, be your authentic self, create a fulfilling life, do all these things. But how can I do that when I am living paycheck to paycheck and just need a roof over my head, food for my family, and those basic needs. And so that's why I think you telling your story and being vulnerable like this is such a gift to so many people, because a lot of people are there. And so I want to
Yeah.
ask you about that. Can you tell me about the pivots you've made, the sacrifices you've made, the changes that you've made as a result of the financial struggles that you've had?
Yeah, and it's not pretty, but it's not, it's ugly. There's no two ways about it. Is many women stay in a situation because they're worried about the financial aspect of it. It's probably, the number after kids, that's, I'm sure, neck and neck with why you don't leave is the financial. And some women have careers, some women work part-time, some women don't work. It's obviously, I've always worked, other than a very short period of time when my kids were little. I was finally at the point where I didn't care about, I just, it was just so incredibly bad. What happened was we were going to buy the home that we were renting. We had signed a purchase and sale. It fell through. I mean, my ex-husband was such a severe alcoholic. He had been losing jobs and tried to start his own company. That failed several times. So that affected, our credit, getting approved for a house, all those things, which it's, more and more difficult to do that these days. And when it fell through, it was another sign to me to say, okay, you're not about to pick up and move into another home with this person. That's not going to happen. Like, it was such an incredibly toxic situation that I just said that there's just no way in the world you can move. So I just said, I'm not doing that. This is the time. So that's how I knew when things fell through. So, I didn't have a house to sell. I didn't have, and it was so incredibly, the situation on a day-to-day basis was so bad that it was the, literal leaving with the shirt on your back situation. I started to look for places. I was worried because I knew I was leaving. And I think that's a very scary thing for a lot of women, is they feel like if they're the ones to leave, that's like you're abandoning your kids. I did a lot of a long laundry list of the things that people are scared to do. So I am living proof that you can do them, but I just knew it was so toxic on a daily basis. I've almost blacked out how bad it is. And I think probably that's healthy that I don't remember it that, deeply. At least, this is 6 years after. But I just knew I could never continue to stay in the situation. It was so terrible. And I didn't know what next week was going to look like. So, I ended up finding that rental house. It ended up being across the street from a friend. I did everything. I just called out my friends. They were like, what can we do? What can we move? How can we help? Just all the things. Oh, I don't know how to assemble this table. Like, what you realize as a single mom is you're forced to do all the things because no one else is going to do it but you. And forced lessons can be good lessons. And they sometimes, you being forced into doing them, it can be a great thing. It is, sometimes we just don't do things that we say we want to do until we're forced to do them. But I left the marriage making very little money. I was getting child support at the time. That ended. My ex-husband, the night before we went to court, he sent me an email saying that he resigned from his job because he didn't want to work anymore, didn't want to travel, wanted to be around for his son's high school years, the last 2 years of high school, which ironically he was not around at all, you know. But, and interestingly enough, that was just evidence to a judge that you're trying to get out of paying child support, or you're not being a responsible parent. So it kind of helped and hurt all at the same time. But so not too long after, I stopped getting child support. So it was only me. So yeah, it was very rough at moments. It was, what am I going to do?
And you were away from family at the time. I think did you have one in college? Is that right?
So they were both, my older was in high
Okay.
school. He was a junior in high school when I moved. So when we separated, and then my younger was in middle school. So they're 3 years apart. But yeah, and high school is a very hard time to move and go through a divorce, and the year after that, it was COVID. So we went through quite a rocky, few years. But yeah, I didn't have my sister lived a couple hours away, but I was surrounded by a lot of friends. It definitely helped me that I know a lot of people. I'm extremely social. That helped to be my support network. But it was just always, I think it's still a little cringy, but the single mom with the hustle is always my cringy saying. But you are always hustling and figuring out what your next move is. And, you just are learning to do it. Part of me is actually really happy. I can say that I did it myself. I kind of am happy that, and I don't think child support or getting monetary support is taking, because it's not taking in any form is it taking, but it is a very proud feeling that I have done this, despite a lot of big, obstacles and odds. I, obviously kids are what make you continue to keep going. And I would just say to people, give yourself time, because you're not going to see the results for a little while. I'm just incredibly proud. My older son just graduated college. He graduated a semester early, actually. He came home. He's working in Washington, D.C. And he came home to walk in graduation in May. I said, you have to come home. We missed high school graduation because of COVID. So come walk in graduation. So, I have a college graduate. I got him through college. My younger is in high school. He just graduated high school. He just finished freshman year at UMaine this past year. And he's, the opposite of his older brothers, not academic, not school oriented. And he absolutely kicked ass, did amazing. And I say, I am proud of myself. Like, I am a huge part of their success, but I did not take the tests for them. I didn't show up to school every day. I didn't write every paper. I didn't, I want to give them so much credit because they survived everything too. But I am super proud of myself that I gave them the safety net and the work ethic and the will to keep going.
And that's what you've shown them. I mean, that's the gift, is that, you've shown them about that despite the odds, you can do these things. I mean, single mom, single income, now, no child support, doing it on your own, and giving them the love and support. And at the end of the day, that's what they need. And seeing you, as hard as it was, seeing you do that on your own, what a gift, and I think that is probably why they're thriving right now.
Yeah, I do believe that. I do give myself credit. I definitely, everyone out there, give yourself credit. Everyone take credit for whatever you can. It took me a long time to get to the point where I gave myself credit. I'm sure I still beat myself up about things. Every kid has issues, whether they're in a home with two loving parents, a divorced parent, any situation, kids have struggles. They just do. And some kids, honestly, my kids are doing pretty great considering, everything that's happened to them. So it is possible, you can get to the other side. It's just, I don't want to negate the, the hard times. I don't want anyone to hear this and think, oh, well, that's great. You've made it to the other side. There's still daily battles. I mean, I work two jobs. I'm still getting one, through college, which, that's tough. But they're both very hard workers, great work ethic. They know they have to do certain things themselves. They know what it's going to take to succeed. So sometimes there are those outcomes that you don't think are going to happen because people will meet them and say, and of course there's all these struggles with kids now, is that, they are responsible, they are respectful, they do work hard, and there are few of those kids apparently now these days, or from what I hear.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of gratitude about that,
Well, and this isn't your story. This isn't the end. I think that's the other piece that's really important here is if you look at where you've come even to today, and you look back, I try not to look back too much. I try to only look forward, but still, when you do look at where you are now, it is amazing what you have gone through and then where you are now, where your kids are now. And it's not the end of the story. While yes, you are working two jobs right now, but you're working two jobs to get to your end goal, which is whatever it is for
Probably always working two jobs, but that's okay.
No, I don't believe that. I believe that, because that all of this, the things that you are doing now are going to lead you to what the next thing is for you. And, you're not always going to have a child in college. Things are going to evolve and your story is going to change. And I do feel that each one of these things that happens is leading us in a particular direction. And I think the discomfort of all of it is the lesson, is somewhere in there is the lesson that is going to push you forward. And if you didn't have such a great friend network, and if you didn't have, the support of your family, and if you didn't have, the list goes on and on and on to support you, you might be in a very different situation. And if you didn't use those things, so there is a lot of things to be thankful for and grateful for.
Yeah. And I even, I listened to your podcast and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, my life looks so different than a lot of the people you talk to. And I questioned myself. You question if you're, and that probably was an important thing that I did is, and, everyone questions what they're going through. Is it their fault? Is it valid? Is it, is my struggle different than everyone else's? It's still not as pretty as what they're describing. It's still, but, I would love to, reach out or be a resource to anyone going through surviving alcoholism, surviving literally picking up and leaving with what you have on your back. And because all you can do in those situations is almost, talk it through all the time with your friends and yourself. Okay, I'm going to get through till tomorrow. Okay, I'm not sure what next month is going to look like, but you'll just keep getting through. It can be a very day-to-day situation, but just like the way people saw things declining during a divorce, they're also going to see when things start looking better. So people can read the energy around you from when you're divorced and when you're doing well too.
Oh, yes.
So they'll see that as well.
Yeah. And it gets less and less painful, right? I mean, it gets less and less. There are so many different stages you go through of, leaving the marriage. Okay, making the decision to do that. You're not rescuing anymore. This is where you're at, and you've got to make that decision. Okay, made that decision. Then you've got to find a place to live. Okay, you got to do that, got through that. Then there's the pain of, oh my God, the guilt, all the things that go around with leaving an alcoholic, and you don't know what's going to happen to them. And it's the father of your children. And all of this, to having to work 2 jobs, to do all these things. And so I want to speak to what you said about, looking at other guests I've had on the show. Everybody starts somewhere, and it's a journey, and every single person may be right now. There might be women on the show saying, "Oh, I've started this business and I'm doing all these things now." It doesn't mean they were there forever. And the whole reason I'm so happy you did this. And for those of you out there, and for you as well, Alex, at some point, go back and listen to my Jill episode. It's an anonymous guest who came on the show and talked about her story. And she also was married to an alcoholic, but chose to be anonymous. And that is what the show is about, is I want it to be about.
You can respect if you want to be anonymous, by the way.
Yes.
That's important, is if you're not ready, that's okay. If you're not ready, that's also a big message. You'll be ready when you're ready. I learned that lesson too. So that's important, I think, for women to hear, is when you're ready, you will know. And
that is why you're here today, because you weren't ready. Right. And that I think that is another thing that I want to say to people out there is, yes, you will know when you're ready to tell your story, when you're ready to make some of these hard decisions. You will know, and everybody is on a different path. And so that I'm so happy you're here, and that you are brave for telling your story. And there are so many others out there that I hope hear it, and I know they will, and resonate with it and say, yeah, I'm there right now too. Or maybe they're not. Maybe they want to be where you are. It's a journey. And, but one of the things I do want you to talk about, and I ask a lot of my guests, but I wanted to ask you in particular, because it's something that I love about you, is that whenever you show up authentically you. You show up, no apologies. You show up who you are. And that is such a gift that so many people don't have. And it's taken me a long time to be really honest, to get to a place where I can be honest, and to even tell my story. I mean, I just did that a few weeks ago, and that was incredibly difficult. Yeah. And so I
texted you to say how brave that was, because I know how hard that is.
It's incredibly hard. And so that's why I'm also saying how brave you are, because this is not easy. It's not easy at all. And, I would love for you to talk in particular about, what does it mean for you to be authentic? What does that word mean to you? Because I think you are someone who lives it from what I know, on a pretty much regular basis.
Yeah. No, and some of it too is, it is my personality. It is my DNA and who I am. I don't, it's nothing that I've read in a book and started to act. It's who I am. It's a little bit, I say it's like a little sprinkling of the Bronx, a little bit of a short female, a little bit of a blonde. It's everything. But the way I cope with everything, and it's been is humor and dark humor. That is the way, that's my coping mechanism. When things are absolutely at their worst, I'm just, well, you know what? This is what's happening. This is, it looks like we're going to have to move, or it looks like, and that's okay. You just, the way I've coped with everything is to just dark humor. I don't hug trees like you. I
love my trees.
I know you hug trees. I say F-bombs. I know. I was like, about how I say F-bombs and Crissy
I
hugs
do.
trees.
I love it.
Yeah, no, but and that's okay. Like that cracks me up. I love it. But that's what I think is a little unusual. I feel like when I tell my story is I don't let anyone treat me in a way that I don't approve of. That's just everyone in my life knows that. Everyone knows that's my personality. So if anything, it bothers me that I allowed someone, to treat me that way, and that his behavior isn't my responsibility. But if you get to a point where you're allowing it for too long, you have to take responsibility. You just do, and it was a really painful year after we separated, because I had to stand in the mirror for a metaphorical mirror for a very long time and take responsibility for the role I played in everything too. And I'm very upfront about a lot of things. I think mostly in a good way. But I'm who I am, and that's not everyone is like that. I love that part of my personality. I really, I love that I'm the funny friend. I love that, I'm always going to have the joke for what someone has to say. That's my superpower. My superpower is learning that, everything's fine. It's going to be okay. Just making it into a joke, and, that's been my, superpower. I'll say it again. We all have one.
It's totally yours.
Sure.
And I love that. And so, but I think it's good for people to hear, because I think we all have different things. And I love that you talked about my tree hugging, by the way, because nature is just, I have just, in the second half of my life, I have just fallen in love with nature. It's like ridiculous, but it's it literally is where I get my energy from. It's changed my life, my outlook. I walked on eggshells for years. I was an anxious ball of stress. And so that is my release. And for you, it's laughter, and it's making other people laugh and getting that back. I mean, what a gift. And I think we all have something like that. I love how you called it your superpower is,
it's important to laugh. It's really, really important to laugh and to not take things too seriously and not get hung up on, you're not the bad guy and everything. And it's okay to be, for me, it's to be self-deprecating on a whole other level. It's just therapy out loud almost, okay, this is what happened. This is what I did. And you know what, that wasn't the best decision, but this is what happened. And
and I think you talked about, looking in the mirror and looking at some things really closely. And I think that's really important point, that I think in order for us to heal and to move forward, there's two people in every relationship, regardless of how it ended or what happened or who made the decision or why. There's hurt on both sides, and there's ownership on both sides. Now, some is more extreme than others. But even if it's a little part, it is good for us to own that. And then it's also good for us to forgive ourselves, and to also forgive the other person involved, so that you can let go of it, because otherwise you hold on to it. And that was one of the things I had to do for myself, was I had to, in order to let go of the anger and resentment and some of those things, I had to also forgive both myself and him. And that's a journey.
You definitely have to forgive yourself. That's really, really important. And it's another, you'll do it when you're ready.
Yes, exactly.
But I will say, and it could probably segue into dating as well, is I just knew I had to take time for myself after being with one person for nearly, 24 years. I was always baffled by people that could just jump into a relationship after divorce or separating. That blew my mind. Like, I don't understand that. And that's okay. I'm not judging anyone. I just don't understand it. I can't wrap my head around it. For me, I'm honestly not sure if I'll ever be with someone in a relationship again. I mean, this might be a to be continued
It's a
moment.
to be continued for sure.
I'm not ready.
You're not ready. And I'm
not ready. And I know, and it's been 6-ish years and I'm not ready. And it's a very personal journey for everyone on that level. I'm not ready. Maybe I won't ever be. I try to not put a period at the end of that sentence. That's something I, struggle with. Like, we're all going to have our continued struggles. We're not like, oh, we have healed.
No. To be honest, we'll never be completely healed. I think, we're evolving. Exactly. And I think, if you do rush into dating and you're not ready, then you will find people, but you won't find the right people. And that's what happens to so many women is, I was the one who I couldn't be alone with my own thoughts. I literally could not be alone with my own thoughts.
Oh yeah, I still can't. I can't do yoga because of that.
I do like yoga now, but it's taken me time. I love it now, but it's, again, journey. But I was so petrified that I was going to be an old lady sitting in a rocking chair knitting for my grandchildren and alone with no one to talk to and to have to listen to my thoughts.
Actually, I love knitting. Knitting is very trendy, and I used to knit all the time, and it's actually amazing. So don't chalk off knitting.
I just can't knit, so no dissing on the knitting. I wish I had I was crafty and actually had that talent, but no. But I was picturing literally my grandmother, like she used to make these little Afghans and sit in a little chair, and it is beautiful. But to me, it was like, oh my God, and. But the best thing was when it blew up in my face. Honestly, that was the best thing that could have happened to me because then, fortunately. So, but we're going to do another episode on dating because there is, and you're going to come back. Like, I'm going to have you back once like all these things happen. And for those of you listening out there, Alex had a podcast and I'm going to keep pushing her to hopefully get it back out there again. So maybe the next time she comes on, she will have a podcast going because I think she should. You would be amazing at it. So, well, Alex and I could talk forever, but we're getting to an hour here. So I'm going to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I know this helped women out there. I know it did. And you being brave, hopefully, is going to prompt other women to do the same thing. And so I am going to say to those of you out there listening, we all have a story to tell, and it can be very cathartic, very, very healing to tell it, to share it, and it can definitely help other people. And so when the timing is right, I'm here with a platform, and I want you to come share your stories. And you can be anonymous, as we talked about. So please do that. And Alex, if anyone wants to follow Alex on social media, do you mind sharing your social media?
Yeah. Oh, now. Oh, what is my social media?
Like your Instagram.
Yeah. No, I'm Alex B. Foltz, actually. I'm still Foltz on my Instagram. Oh, that would be amazing. Anyone reach out to me. You know, I love to talk about nothing's off the table.
Yay.
But yeah, it's Alex Foltz on Instagram, Alex Bregman Foltz on Facebook, soon to be only Alex Bregman down the road. Absolutely. I'm a resource for anyone in all of those topics. I
Thank you.
Open book for anyone.
Great. Well, I'll include that in the show notes too. So if people want to reach out to you, they can, which would be so fun. And she is such a fun person. And like I said, she'll make you laugh at a minimum. So, but she, is a great person to talk to as well. So I also want to share before we close out that people out there listening, mark your calendars for Saturday, October 26th. We finally solidified a date for when I will be hosting a retreat with my friend Diane Murphy. It will be in Maine. It will be called Fall Into You for women in transition, whether that's divorce, whether that's grief, whether it's empty nest, whether it's job change. That's what it's for. So excited. So stay tuned for more information on that. It will be on my website, which is FromMrsToMe.com. I'll share more here, or you can find it in the Facebook community, From Mrs. to Me, Rediscovering You After Divorce. And until next time, as I always say, you can't pour from an empty cup. So please keep doing that inner work, and I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed another episode of From Mrs. to Me, real life stories of real women and their journey of transformation after divorce. I'm Crissy Freeman, and if you like this episode, please drop a review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Do you have a story to share? Are you ready to inspire other women on their journey through divorce? If so, find me on Instagram at From Mrs. to Me. For more tools and resources on creating your path to transformation after divorce, follow my community on Facebook, From Mrs. to Me, Rediscovering You After Divorce.